welcome to this vet chat. We have a very special guest on this time for our focus topic. This is going to be about mentorship and the gems and the many things that are there that we may not be fully cognizant of. We're going to look at it from both perspectives, not only from the individual who is doing the mentorship, also the benefits and the other things that people need to consider that they are when they are being mentored as well. So I want to thank you all for being here. As VetCHAT, we are a part of the Vet Match. We have multiple vet chats throughout the month, each month. This is one where we invite everyone. That's why it's called the virtual. So anyone that has any connection or relation to animals and the love of animals. I think right now we have someone on who has pets, and she actually is working with ways for helping finance for individuals needing to get veterinary care. Tennille, I'm not sure of your role. If you want to either unmute and share what you are as well, you're welcome to, or you can put it in the chat. And some of the other vet chats that we offer are for students. That's actually coming up next Sunday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. If you happen to know a student that is pre-vet, someone that is looking for help as in their TA, in their technician, veterinary students of any year, we welcome to come through on that vet chat for students, because we know sometimes it's kind of tough. And Tennille, you are RVT and the Derm Specialty Practice. Well, welcome,
Awesome.
welcome. Thank you. Congratulations on that. So those are all opportunities. We also have vet chats for private practice owners. We have the vet chats for leaders, as in practice managers or team leads, could be a technician or so, just to kind of have that safe space to have conversations of what are those challenges? What are you facing? What's working for you? What's not? Hey, I had a great celebration. So those are available to you. We are also very excited about launching our brand new website soon. We've had you always evolve and come up with new ideas. We've been getting feedback and we listen. We want to make it as user-friendly as possible. So we are revamping our current vetmatchpro.com website. That will be live and for the new upgrades on this coming Thursday. So look forward to seeing that. All right, enough about that. And we now want to go into the mentorship. So we have a very special guest, Dr. Beth Neuman. Dr. Neuman actually has had quite a bit of experience as a veterinarian herself. Not only has she been in the field for nearly 20 years, she also has been in the emergency practice. She has been involved in specialty in that dynamic, so she knows how that all functions. Most of all, she has started her own practice, which then grew into a satellite location. And then she was able to let that one have a role with another owner, where she now is a part owner in the one. So she is here joining us from Arizona. Just came back from apparently a very wonderful trip to France, where she was sponsored by Royal Canin to be able to go and take part in the world. What was it? Which one did you go to?
World Vet Symposium.
The World Vet Symposium. And sounds like you had quite a bit of information transported to you.
Yes, yes, it was wonderful.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Beth, we always find it intriguing how individuals get to where they are right now, and everyone has their own different paths. Can you share with us right now, you are the mentor leader, the head mentor for the NVA in the area. And can you tell us how you got from your emergency practice to suddenly having your own practices and now this?
Yeah. So I think I could talk the whole hour on that alone. But what I will say is I took a really roundabout way to vet med. I was not your average child who wanted to be a veterinarian forever and ever. I graduated from college with an English degree. I got a cat from the shelter. I'm a cat person. And he was a chronic vomiter. I took him to a veterinarian who did not treat me very well. And so I was determined to fix this cat myself. And that is what led me to vet school. I graduated in 2004. There were not from the University of Minnesota, and the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities is very metropolitan and very saturated with veterinarians. So we made, and I wanted to do emergency, so we made the trek to Arizona, where I became an emergency practitioner. I did that for 8 years. I learned a lot about what I didn't want to be and how I didn't want to operate a practice. And I would say that I did not have great mentorship initially, which is kind of why I wanted to be. I think that's what drives me into mentorship today, is that I feel like my experience was not as good as it could have been. And so I'd like to make sure that for future generations, they do have the support that they need to come out and be good practitioners. So I did, after 8 years in the ER, my body kind of said, hey, let's not stay up all night anymore. Can we do something different? And so I opened a daytime practice, though we had extended hours. We were open till 11 p.m. and I did a lot of urgent care. So I like to say that I was probably the original urgent care. And so we were open 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And I grew that practice from a 1-doctor practice to a 5-doctor practice. And upon our attempt to expand, found that it was going to be a lot smarter to purchase some land and build. So I built a second practice, and it basically took on a life of its own and a clientele of its own. So I was owning and managing 2 veterinary practices. I have 3 kids, 2-legged kids, and that became really overwhelming. So I did sell my first practice, and then I think for me, I like a lot of challenge and I like a lot of change. I like change management, but I think I'm an agent for change. And so I ended up going back to my original emergency practice as they were purchased by a corporate entity and they needed somebody to kind of turn the boat around. And so I went back to that ER practice and did that for a year, at which point I just really realized that I loved the idea of training. I loved the idea of taking care of new graduates, and actually all DVMs, like team happiness and success, from the veterinary assistant and kennel tech to the RBT to the DVM, was kind of my passion. So I shifted focus and made those my clients. And so I landed with NVA as they implemented what they call the GP mentorship program. So they promised mentorship to every new grad that they hired across the country. And I became a mentor. So really, I think in growing my initial practices from 1 doctor to 5 and then having another, I've probably hired 10 new graduates over the course of my career, if not more, been influenced by seeing how training happens. I like the idea of mentorship and onboarding structure, but not rigidity, because everybody that you onboard will have different needs. So super excited, Tennille, to have you just get an idea of the framework of what a mentor might offer to a new intern, because everybody is different. And so having those initial conversations, I think, are super, super important. So I like to say we give structure to the program, but everything we do is with the mentee in mind. So
fantastic. And I know we have some on the call that actually are about to be mentored as well. So
awesome.
We'll definitely get into that. Can we start from the beginning? What does mentorship actually mean?
So to me, mentorship is a relationship between 2 people. It's mutually beneficial. I want to be really clear that I get as much as I give. And so it's finding that one person or 5 people. I believe that you can have more than one mentor at the same time. It is a sharing of gifts and ideas and resources in a mutually beneficial way to ensure the success and development of the individual. So mentorship can happen in veterinary medicine, it can happen in human medicine, it can happen in a police department, it can happen between a new DVM and their technician, it can happen between technicians. So for me, it's just a support system and it's a relationship. And so it might be a relationship that lasts for a year, it might be a relationship that lasts for a lifetime. I think it means different things to different people, but to me, it's just a share. It's just a share.
Right. And considering that mentorship happens in the veterinary profession anyway, from anywhere from doctor to CSR to
Yeah,
technician to specialist all the way around, it's important to realize not only are there different ways of learning that are different people, but it's also so many different dynamics of who is mentoring whom. Do you feel that there should be separate for the safeguarding of the mentor, for example, in the typical veterinary hospital, if we were to use the typical general practitioner where there may be, let's say there's 3 to 4 doctors in this hospital and they're taking on an intern as was here in this example, they're taking on an intern. How should we divvy up the responsibility of, for example, the doctor and the technician when they are working with an intern? If let's say the intern is a doctor as well, what role should a technician play in this, and what role could the doctor be playing in this? And then we'll
I think
flip it
that's a
also to
great
the
question.
technician.
Yeah. So, honestly, if you're talking, ideally, if you're talking about a 3 to 4 doctor practice and you're bringing in a new DVM, that's how we'll kind of play that. The technician role is super important. I recommend having 1 or 2 technicians working with that doctor specifically. So many hospitals have a rotation where this technician might work with this doctor one day, they might work with Dr. B the next day. I like to suggest that a hospital give their most experienced technician or their most, and I don't want to say most experienced as in I've been here the longest, but somebody who really knows the practice. Because
Mhm.
sometimes what mentorship means is if a new graduate or a new DVM to the practice is struggling a little bit, maybe the question becomes, hey, what would medical director do in this situation? Sometimes those technicians can really give a good hint. Or a technician might say, hey, would you like me to get started on some blood work and x-rays? Or do you have a preference if like they've known Mrs. Jones, client Jones for X many years, and they know that money's tight. And so they're giving that information up front so that a new DVM can make the best choices. Let me stop and say, I always recommend plan A be gold standard, be recommended. But again, having some of that knowledge that the technician has about this client, historical knowledge, or hey, we're not going to go into exam room 1 because that's where Mrs. Jones lost Fluffy last month. Let's take room 2 for her new puppy, right? So I think that technicians have a lot to give. Did you have?
I'm
I saw
hearing
you
that
like looking
that
like you wanted
technician.
to.
Well, so what I'm hearing is that again, we're using right now the example of a doctor intern or doctor mentee, and then we'll switch over to the technicians as well and assistants and CSRs just
Yeah.
as a broad sense. So what I'm hearing is that when we discuss mentorship, not only are we talking of the medical components, how to set an IV catheter, what's the treatment diagnostics plans and such. We're also incorporating the cultural facets, how to connect with a client, how to handle and engage with coworkers potentially, or the
Yes.
patient themselves.
How to settle into a clinic, how
Mhm.
to make that transition from student or different hospital into a new hospital. I will tell you that as a mentor for the past 3 years, I do give medical advice. We do share information about cases. I do help somebody hone their differentials list, but I also talk about, are you getting enough sleep? How's it going with your practice manager? How do you feel about your schedule? We have role playing about how to get a raise or how to ask for new equipment or a new drug in the system. Um,
Fantastic.
so yeah, absolutely. How to settle in, how to smooth that transition into a new practice. Everybody can be responsible for that. Kennel
I love
technicians,
that. I love
CSRs, yes, absolutely.
Oh, I love that. So I apologize. I cut in there. So let's go back with the path you were taking. Then how does a doctor work with a doctor as a mentor?
Yes. So, and that is super important. So, my recommendation, I think, and the way I see it working the best is that the new doctor have one doctor in the practice who is a main mentor, one doctor in the practice who is having weekly to every other week sit down check in meetings. How's it going? What are your questions? How can I help you? Giving feedback. Hey, I love to share feedback. I love if you get a good Yelp review or a good Google review. It's important because we all know that we're going to read a bad Google review, right? We all know that someone's going to Yelp or Facebook some really nasty stuff about us. But if somebody comes at us with, hey, I just wanted to reach out and tell you that practice manager Sarah heard at the front desk how much they really enjoyed their appointment with you. That is super important for building confidence. So every week or every other week, and it has to be, I call it guarded time, because we all know that you say, oh, let's hook up on Friday in the morning. That never happens. Something happens in the clinic or you're late to work or whatever. That has to be precious, precious time. It should not happen over your lunch hour. Okay. This is time. This is paid time. And your lunch hour should be away time. That whether you go into an office and close a door or your car and shut the door and turn the radio on, whatever that precious time is for you for lunch, that's important to have. And so your mentor time should be, I like before appointments start. So if it's going to be in the morning, that's fine. If your appointments start at 8 o'clock, maybe we block off from 8 to 8:30 and we have that check-in time. However, I also think that the rest of the doctors in the practice are on the hook for some teaching and some feedback. I love when I walk into a doctor's office and they're having this giant share. They're all looking at the same x-ray. They're all talking about the same lab work. Everybody should be able to offer advice. And in my practice, I mean, I can tell you, I have a gentleman who specializes in derm. He is not board certified, but he loves derm. And when I hired him, I often said, I'll take all your spays and neuters and mass removals and dentals if you'll do all my derm. And he was like, deal. So we all know that everybody has their special interest. Do I want to be a straight up spay neuter doctor? Some days I do, but he wants to do dermatology, but he didn't want to do so much dermatology that was all he did. So he's in a general practice, but we make sure that he gets enough derm to keep him really happy. And so if you have a practitioner in your practice who's really into acupuncture and somebody is not, and the mentee, whether they be a new grad or a new doctor to your practice, is interested in acupuncture, makes no sense for somebody else to be giving acupuncture information. So I like to say that everybody should have an assigned mentor, and I oftentimes don't recommend that it be the medical director, only because the medical director has a ton of other stuff on his or her plate, and maybe they're not a great fit for mentoring. Maybe they are, and that's fine too. But I think we really need to think about tapping our other associates. What I find the most interesting is we're all mentoring all the time. All the associates are mentoring. All the technicians are mentoring. They just don't know that that's what it's called, right? Helping and offering advice, that's mentoring. And so answering questions, that's mentoring. We're all mentoring all the time, but I like to have one primary and then spread it out between the doctors.
Do you also utilize that same breakdown or technique with technicians and suggestions for CSR?
Yes. So and depending on depending on where your situation, I like to do job shadowing, but not too much shadowing. I think that especially for like a doctor, for example, they've been shadowing through their 4th year, and now it's time to get your feet wet. But for technicians, I think it's really important if you are an experienced technician and someone has asked you to be a technician buddy, I would call it a technician buddy or a technician partner or a kennel tech partner. You can, whatever you want to name it. I think that you should be working together with them for at least the first week to get to know the practice, to get to know the computer system, how to submit lab work. I firmly believe there should be a written, whatever you want to call it, an SOP or a training plan or whatever, so that they know they have to check all those boxes as they go through training. And I think that it's a little more free form with technicians because there's more technicians out there in a practice, that you find somebody who you can click with and who can give you the best guidance as you learn that practice. And so, yes, I do. I think it works the same.
What I'm hearing then is that the general program you suggest is, first of all, have more a written dynamic of a checklist of some sort of all the things that need to be covered at least within a certain period of time so that everyone has the expectations. And then
Yes.
with that, number one, the mentee will be more of a follower first. Just watch, take the responsibility off, lower that stress load, just have a chance to understand what the dynamics are, what's expected, have an opportunity to ask the questions without having people watching over your shoulder. So you're actually watching over someone else's shoulder to start, then gradually moving in. I love that. In fact, you had mentioned the fourth year students. I know that at Colorado State University, they have just initiated, this is the first year, and this class will be coming out in 4 years then. That last year, it's a very different program all the way through. It's very integrative, very hands-on-ish. And the last
Excellent.
year, they will be in a general practice type of a setting that would be akin to them being first year graduates out in the field. That way, as they've graduated, they already are mentored and menteed. Obviously, there's always room to grow and there's still a new establishment, but I know I'm very excited about seeing how that dynamic builds forward. So
Do you
how,
feel like that? I guess let me throw that back at you. Do you feel
yeah,
like that's more like because CSU has a teaching hospital
yes,
versus someplace like the University of Arizona, who graduated their first inaugural class last year? They use a very distributive model. There's no teaching hospital. And so their clinical year is spent in the field at different practices. So a much more hands-on approach, which I definitely like. I know it's a whole nother topic. I think there are pros and cons to both, right? I think that in a teaching hospital, you get exposure to lots of different cases, but I think in a lot of ways, you're seeing the creme de la creme, if you will, of people who can afford tertiary care. You might be seeing the weirder things, the unicorns, if you will, versus distributive model where they put you into a GP, you're in a general practice, and you're just seeing everyday life. You're seeing day to day what comes in, which I think has
yeah.
its benefits as well.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up to differentiate between the two. That is actually what they're going towards. They're building an entirely new section to the hospital, the teaching hospital, that is a GP. So
Excellent.
they can know how
I
to
love
deal
it.
with ear infections, anal gland expressions. Yeah, the funny story. When I first graduated a few decades ago, when I first graduated, I had my pre-vet was in a very different dynamic. I was more in the academia research side. So I hadn't had much of the clinical experience at all. So my first week in postgraduate, I'm a first year new grad, and the owner brings their dog in to have his anal glands expressed, and I'm looking kind of helplessly up at the technician, and the technician looks and smiles gently at me, asking me, Dr. Pyka, would you like me to do that anal gland expression for you or show you how to do so? And I'm going, yes, please.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's
Because
something
when
that's
whoever comes to a teaching hospital for anal gland expression, right?
exactly,
The people who show up with anal gland issues are the ones who've had them expressed for like 7 years and have finally decided they're going to do an anal gland excision, right? And so that's
yes,
what we see. Yeah,
yeah,
I totally get
yeah.
yes.
So, but my point with that particular story is at that point, a technician was mentoring the doc.
Yes,
That technician
absolutely.
had so much more experience than I did at that point in time, and I was gladly receptive.
Yep.
So it does bring forth the point that I feel is very important, that from a mentor perspective, first of all, she asked permission. She asked me, would you
Yes.
like me to? I still distinctly remember that. And I acquiesced and said yes. I did not let pride get in the way. I knew
Right.
that I could learn from this situation, and then that would take me forth eons later, which it
I mean,
did.
I think that speaks to the respect that we owe each other, whether you're
Yes.
the doctor or the technician or the lowly kennel person. Like we all have to ask permission. You know, my funny story is I think my very first week or two out of practice or into practice, I saw my first marijuana toxicity. And I
Uh,
will tell you that I think it was far more rare 25 years ago than it is now to have a marijuana toxicity. But mine was a little chihuahua that was, now I know clearly, intoxicated. But when I went into the back, I had no idea. And my lead technician said, that is clearly a marijuana toxicity, and showed me why, made all the points, pointing out the physical exam findings. And so I same, it's so important that we put our pride aside and listen.
You know, I love that you put it that way, Dr. Beth, with respect to the listen and the respect. It ties right into what I'd like to ask next. What is the difference between micromanagement and mentorship?
Oh, that's a great question. Sometimes the difference is nothing, because, well, that's wrong. I think that micromanagement is dangerous. If you take away all the ability to do the research and learn and make mistakes by micromanaging, swooping in at any moment when they might make a mistake, they're not going to learn anything.
Mhm.
So, the word micromanagement just makes me shiver. You have to be open to your new graduate or your new doctor or your new technician doing things their way, right? And or making a mistake. And then you have to be ready to be supportive and guide them when that mistake is made. Because how many of us have learned a lesson that has never left us from doing it right the first time? I would
Exactly.
argue, I would argue the only things that stick out in my mind are my horrendous mistakes.
Mhm.
And so what I offer with mentorship, or what I like to offer with mentorship, is I will help you avoid some of the mistakes that I've made, but rest assured you're going to make your own, and I'm here to support you through that. Right? I want to swoop in if the pet is in danger. But other than that, I'm going to let them make a mistake. I think that's okay. So I don't love micromanagement. I really don't. But I'd like to also point out that mentorship to new doctors, whether they're a new to your practice or a brand new grad, they think of mentorship in many different ways. I will tell you the AVMA study shows that the leading reason that new doctors are choosing their hospitals is the new graduates are looking for mentorship. Location and money are
Great.
second and third, but the first thing they're looking for is mentorship. But a lot of them don't know exactly what they're looking for as a mentor. Some of them really want their hand held. I currently support 25 new graduates, and I have a couple of them that I talk to every single week. Sometimes they text me multiple times a week to talk about tough cases, tough clients, staff issues that they're having. And I have several mentees that I speak to maybe monthly. Maybe they show up for rounds every once in a while, but they're really doing well. It's just they like to know that there's somebody like me that they can contact when they need it, but they
Mhm.
don't need me very much. And so it's very mentee driven. In my opinion, a mentor is hovering if they are the only ones reaching out. I think it's important for it to be very mutual. I'm going to text my mentees tomorrow morning. They all get a group text. Happy Monday. Please reach out if you need something. And some of them will, and some of them won't. So I think, and to get to a point where you're setting expectations, I think every single mentee mentor relationship needs to start with a really frank conversation about who is giving what, when the check-ins are going to be, and what the expectations are. And there, so Kate Boatwright, that might be a name that you know, she has written the mentorship manual. I have read it twice. I love it. It does not 100% pertain to my current position because I'm not in the hospital with them all the time, but it certainly gives great guidelines for setting expectations for these relationships. So if you don't have it, I highly encourage you to check out Kate Boatwright's book. She's also on socials. And so she's really terrific about giving information about mentorship relationships.
Absolutely. I just put her
Yes.
website in the chat. So I was hoping to get her on a call today, actually, but she had a conflict, so was not able to attend. So, but I'm glad you brought her up. Thank you.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
terrific.
Yeah, it turns into the importance of understanding the expectations, setting the expectations, and then recognizing everyone has different needs. For example, some of the doctors that the new graduates that we're placing into hospitals, I have one that's looking for more mentorship specifically in surgery. Another one is actually great, and she's like, you know what? I've done tons of spays and neuters. I am fine with that. I'm looking for an ER practice, and I want to have make sure that I get that mentorship in the trauma department and that different angle. So it is so different with each individual, and especially even with technicians. I know we've got technicians and assistants on the call here too. Uh, will there are some that have already been working in the field for so long that they know how to take histories. It's an easy for them to prep a surgical case, but maybe they haven't had an opportunity to set that IV catheter yet or how to do the bandaging. So those are all things that I also would like to invite and encourage and empower the mentees in having a voice, right? Dr. Neuman has already just said it, where she says, they will reach out, her mentees will reach out when they need it. So we need to make sure that you all feel comfortable as a
Yes.
mentee saying, I need some help. There is no need to be embarrassed. That anal gland expression, for example, why did it take for me to look really discombobulated and confused versus saying, you know what, Tracy, could you just help me with this?
Yes.
So,
This is a place where we have to set our
Mhm.
egos aside and recognize that vet med is a place for lifelong learning. I learn things every day.
Still do.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, and so you have to just I love the idea of sitting down with a mentee prior to the relationship starting and just talking about, like, how are you best communicated with? Do you want me to text you? Um, I want to let you know that there's no such thing as a dumb question. So if you have what you think is a dumb question, maybe let's come up with a code word, right? You text me silly
Yeah.
or wombat or like a word, pick a word that you wouldn't normally use, and just to let me know that you're feeling a little insecure about it. But I, I feel like the relationship has to be really open, again, setting pride aside and learning to listen so that they feel comfortable coming to you when there's a problem. um,
Dr. Newman, what are your thoughts on having one-on-one mentorship as in person versus picking up the phone or hopping on a Zoom or texting back and forth?
So here's my best example. I started 2 years ago in what we call a cohort. I had a cohort of 20, and every time I met one in person, the relationship got stronger. And so as I moved through, like, 20 is a lot of visits to get through. So by the time I got to 20, I had to start over again. But every time I did an in hospital visit, the relationship got stronger. So then last year, I visited everybody first. Like, we had a group meeting and we made some one-on-one time. And that really helped, in my opinion, helped solidify the relationships that I have this year. So I am in a position where we are in hospital with these new graduates at least every other month. And we can work on whatever that mentee would like. Usually it's surgery, right? We're doing spays and neuters, mass removals, dentals, but we're also sitting in between those and we're talking about tough cases. We're going through lab work. So I think it's important. Honestly, I think it's very important to establish a face to face if we can and maintain that, but it doesn't have to be all the time. I then go home to my home office where I sit right now, and I might get 3 to 10 text messages or emails a day with questions. So what I like to think of myself as is a second layer, right? Here's the best example I can give. If you are a new grad or a new doctor and you come out of an exam room and you have a question, you're trying to formulate a treatment plan, you need to build an estimate, whatever, you have a question, and you come out of that room and you look both ways, and there's Dr. X going crazy, and then Dr. Y over there is going crazy, and you feel like they don't have time for you, text me, call me. That's what I'm there for. I am personally paid full time to be a support system for these new graduates, these new DVMs. And so I think of it as, like, not a blanket, right? But they can call me whenever. I think that the relationship has to start with in person. So does that answer your question a little bit?
It does, and as
Okay.
you ties into yet another question. So obviously, in your organization, there's a very strong network of these mentorship systems so that no one feels left out.
Right.
What would you suggest to the smaller hospitals that don't have this large coverage for mentorship? For example, you have a busy hospital with four doctors, or example, in a specialty hospital where there's a doctor, a technician, and now we have a technician coming on board that's there in an externship or an internship, and things are going crazy. What are your suggestions there?
So one of the things I really think is important is that we get them a network aside from me. So one of the things, even in a big like a corporate setting where you have a lot of hospitals, I like to get new doctors from different hospitals in touch with each other. So for example, I cover Phoenix. I have 6 hospitals in Phoenix. They all have a veterinarian. We periodically go out to dinner because my mentorship is 1 year long. They have me for 12 full months. I tell everyone we are colleagues for life, and I will always answer your telephone call. I will always answer your text message, but let's build a network of close by. So, what I like to say is if you're a smaller practice, maybe there are some other practices in town that are also onboarding some new doctors. Maybe you
Loving that.
start, maybe you start a breakfast, a monthly breakfast with folks who are interested and share that way. Maybe you get interested in organized vet med, right? How many of these students were SAVMA? Maybe we could find some other local new grads for them to bond with so that they have, I mean, because I think, and I don't want to get too far into the mental health, I think it's very, very important, but I am not an
Absolutely.
expert. But I think one of the things that we are lacking is connection. I
Mhm.
think that there are enough clients to go around, and there's no reason for us to be cutting the legs out from under each other. And so I think it's really important. Like I have a women practice ownership breakfast every quarter in Tucson. And it was a friend of mine and myself, and we were sitting at breakfast talking about how horrible it was to own a practice. And what we realized was because it's really hard sometimes to be a woman practice owner and know that we're in such a minority that we don't have anyone that we can vent to, right? I never ever vent down. So you never are in a place of authority and venting about how crappy life is to somebody below you. And that's, they say lonely, it's lonely at the top. It
Yep.
kind of is. And so we have this meeting every quarter and we kind of go around, and it used to be just a bitch session, right? It used to be just something we did to complain. Now we lean on each other. And actually I'm writing it down. I have to call Janet because it's time for us to have this breakfast again. So I think
Right.
if you're in a small practice, that's okay. That's great. I loved my small practice. As I grew it, I kind of missed just the 6 of us that started. But reach out, whether it's organized vet med to help make those connections, whether it's other folks in your town, just suggest a breakfast. Be the first person to suggest it. Somebody else is lonely too.
I
And
love
so
that. I love
be
that
my
because
suggestion.
and I can already share that with the vet chats that we have locally here and that we're expanding into other areas of the country. It has been very, very well received, and that competition thing is not there. We have a large, we support another group that gets together here in the Denver area for doctors, and there are doctors from corporate, private, multi-private, hybrid, all kinds, and they're all coming together, and it's all there just to be have a conversation. For the technicians and assistants, check your state associations as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you would like to have a local support group, let me know. We
Yeah.
all would happily sponsor technicians, doctors, students to have a local setting to get together and have these conversations. Now, to follow up with exactly what Dr. Neuman was saying, it's like having these constant complaining sessions. Those are needed and necessary to relieve. The positive aspect is it allows us an opportunity to come up with a solution,
Yes.
even if it's the tiniest little shift that we offer or that we can come up with as a group. We had the just last week we had the leadership vet chat, and the topic came back about even just how to hire. and how difficult it is to hire the right person. We made some conversation of what worked for one practice manager, another practice manager. I provided insights. And so suddenly most of the individuals that were there were able to take a little things home to make a shift. And actually, we're going to apply that here today at the end of this call. We'll still have a chance for the rest of you who are on the call to have some questions for Dr. Neuman or myself as well. But we want you to start thinking, what have you learned today that you can bring home to your hospital or even in your personal life? Because we talk about learning and mentorship and menteeing. This is not just for the veterinary personnel or veterinary career for work. It goes with any hobby that you may have. If you're taking yoga classes, how can I do down dog better? If you're hiking, how can I pack a lighter pack? If you're going skiing, how do you make or snowboarding? How do I do the? So these are all things that you can still apply anywhere in life. So I do have another question for you, Dr. Neuman, and then I think I would like to, we're at 6:42. I'd like to open it up to the group if they have any other questions.
Sure.
Um, how do you approach the individual that's the know-it-all, and they could actually still gain better insights by just listening a little bit more? How do you approach someone like that?
So I think that is my biggest challenge, because I know that there is so much that they don't know, and they don't know what they don't know. And so here it kind of goes back to what I said before about letting them make a mistake. Without getting into too much detail, I have a new grad who knows everything. She doesn't need me. She barely calls me. She had an anesthetic death. And she called me. She was a wreck. And so what I learned from that is that her bravado, the perception that I had that she knew everything, masked significant insecurity. And when this pet died under anesthesia, she began to question whether or not she should even be a veterinarian. And so it's about listening, and it's about, this is what I say. I have a lot of resources. If you don't know something and you ask me and I don't know something, I will know somebody who will know the answer. I have lots of resources, but I am not going to just vomit them all onto you, right? New graduates have just spent 4 years getting information vomited onto them, and they've had to learn how to take it in and categorize and compartmentalize and figure stuff out. I want you to be your own person and make your own decisions. I'm here to help. And again, if you are setting expectations and you are listening and working hard at developing that good relationship, when they hit that wall, whenever it is, because this woman just hit it, like, I think February, I think, was the problem. She's been a new grad for 8 months. Everything's going great. She's killing it. She's feeling real good. She's making the money. And now she doesn't want to be a vet anymore. And so it's the relationship. She when she finally had this breakdown and called me, we're talking about the EAP. We're talking about therapy. We're talking about imposter syndrome. All the resources that I've had since day one of her, she is now open to accepting. So it takes time. Mentorship takes time. That relationship to develop takes time. And so I would say to those who are struggling with the know-it-all, be patient. You don't know what's going on in their head. And it's okay to find them a different mentor. I will say, last year I had a new grad who, she hated me and I hated her. Well, I didn't hate her. I don't hate anyone, and I don't know her well enough to hate her, but I can tell you that we did not get along. And when I came to her practice, I spent a lot of time talking to the practice manager and the MDVM, their managing DVM, about ways to connect with this young woman. And about 9 months in, she elected to exit the mentorship program. And it was a struggle for me because I take it kind of personally, but I recognize, like, I don't like everyone, right? You don't like everyone. And so that's okay. And so we found her a different mentor, and she is thriving. And we actually reconnected not long ago, and she said, I really appreciate the fact that you found me a different mentor. I hope you didn't take it personally. And I said, I totally took it personally, but I recognize intellectually that it was the best thing for you. And so I'm super excited that you like your new
Yeah.
mentor.
Oh, that's a beautiful story, actually, and a blessing that she had you as a mentor versus just butting heads through.
Yeah.
I can share also one of the hospitals that I'm coaching. They have a relatively new grad, and they are getting so frustrated because at all times it's like the new grad was not confident in every single case. I don't know if every is truly the right word, but that's what they were expressing to me. This new graduate was coming to them and asking approval for this. Is this how I should do it? Is this how I should do it? So there was an over reliance in this particular aspect, and there was a moment where coming in from the outside, I had to work with these mentors and explaining to them, okay, let's start, as Dr. Neuman, you said from the very beginning, let's create some written expectations here so everyone's on the same page. I don't think you guys are on the same page, and this may not be, there's maybe a different learning style. Maybe she's not learning how you're doing this, and there's a different way that this particular graduate student can actually build upon her own confidence. So, but
And
yeah,
perhaps, my gut feeling is always to ask, like, did she have an experience where she made a decision and it was wrong, or somebody yelled at her? And so then moving forward, she needed to ask permission. So to
that's a good
me,
point.
right, it goes back to asking this woman, right, your new grad, like, how can I help you? What do you need? Let's
Yeah.
set some expectations. Um, and what caused, it isn't, you never want to say, like, why are you the way you are? Like, because that could be a year-long conversation. Why is someone the way they are? But
Same
is there
reasons I am the way I am, and you are the
yes,
way you are. Yeah.
was there a shaping experience?
Yeah.
Was there an experience that she had that made her doubt herself, that maybe we can walk back and talk her through?
Yeah.
Confidence is a huge issue. Confidence is a
It is.
huge, huge issue.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to make sure that we offered an opportunity for those of you that are on the call to ask any questions that you might have from Dr. Neuman while we have her. Certainly, if not, we'll give you her contact information. You can reach out to
Please.
her as well. But are there any questions? You're welcome to unmute yourself, or you are also welcome to just drop your question in the chat. While we're waiting for that, Dr. Neuman, do you want to give us a little insight how, if someone wants to reach you after this call, what's the best way?
Email. I'm completely addicted to my phone. Please feel free to email me. You can I can drop it in the chat too, but if you want to share my
Yeah,
email, that's totally fine. If you want to share my cell phone number, I will text you back as well. But email helps me. I'm kind of an email hoarder. I like a chain so that I know, how we've been conversing and what the topics have been, so that I don't forget. But yes, email or text message is perfect.
very good. All right. Looks like we do have one question that did come through. Um, has your definition of mentorship changed with your experiences?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a fair question. I think the more I do it, the more I know that it's not about me, it's about the mentee. And
Yeah.
so there's some ego here, right? Like, I want to shape the next generation of veterinarians. And I do, but really, the shape that I want them in is a better shape than I was in. I want them to be mentally prepared. Again, I think that I answer a lot of medical questions, don't get me wrong, but we do a lot of talk about client communication, right? I think that the pandemic didn't do anyone any favors. The curbside, where you had to establish a valid client patient relationship over the phone, is very difficult. Face to face
Mhm.
communication, sharing body language and tone of voice, so critical, in knowing what this owner might not value the dog as much as this owner. This owner may want to do everything for the cat, and this owner may just think of it as a barn cat. I grew up on a farm in North Dakota where the cats stayed in the barn, didn't come in. Um, never slept in your bed, never got, I mean, parasiticide they got, okay? But pretty much that was it. And so now we're in a society where the majority of folks, that cat might be the only person that they talk to when they come home from work, right? And so getting to know your client as part of the medical team, right? You have your doctor, your technician, and your client. That client has to be involved in the decision making, and I think that's where I am making the most impact. But yes, it's setting ego aside and just making sure that your mentee is comfortable. Don't misunderstand. I get a lot out of my job. They bring excitement and new information and the enthusiasm for vet med. I cannot tell you. It just makes me feel young, right? I'm gonna be 50 this year, and I can't imagine a better time to be in vet med. How many, like, maybe we're dating ourselves, Dr. Pika, but like before Serenia was invented, how many anti-nausea medications did we have? How much, like, what was our only option before Apoquel and Cytopoint, right? My new graduates are like, steroids, no. And I'm like, steroids, yes. And so I just think that was the only anti-itch, right? So I love where we are. I know that, like I said, I know mental health is an issue. I want them to be healthier all around, and that is why I mentor.
Um, uh, what a beautiful way to close this conversation, Dr. Neuman. Can you say that one more time?
We are in a great spot. This is a great time to be a veterinarian. I mentor because I love to help them learn. I love to help them grow and develop. We're in a great spot.
I love that. I love that. And the well-being stems from all of this. If there is anyone out there that you're looking for a mentor and you don't have access to one, regardless of what your role is at this time, please reach out to either myself or Dr. Neuman. We are here to support you. And in the VetMatch community, there are so many people that we'd love to connect you with that could be a perfect mentor for you to match your personality and match that skill set, whatever it is you need. We are there for you. If you are struggling right now, please reach out. We can see what we can do to find you the resources that you need. Wellness is so important, and we want you to be safe.
Yeah.
So,
And
thank
oh, can I just say, when we're talking about wellness, one of the things that we talk about is self-care. And I
you.
know that's a buzzword. So I just want to be really clear that a glass of wine after a hard day is absolutely fine. But when we talk about self-care, we talk about connections. We might talk about, I don't know, getting a good night's sleep, eating nutritious food. Those are the long-term, and getting enough sleep, I think, is the number one. There's nothing wrong with a glass of wine. There's nothing wrong with like scrolling on your phone for a little bit, but that does not take the place of deeper connection. So if you're looking for deeper connection, let us help you. That med is for connecting.
I love that. Is there anything that anyone else would like to bring up? We have about 5 more minutes. If there's something that you are right now dealing with, would like to celebrate, you are more than welcome. It doesn't even have to relate to mentorship. You're welcome to pop on and share that. So I'm going to give a quick moment if anyone would like to unmute.
Good. Tennille, if there's anything I can do to help you support your new intern, happy to.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. All right. So for the calendar, because next month is Mother's Day on the second Sunday, we want, again, that self-care. We would never ever want to compete with that. So we're skipping next month's virtual. We will reconvene again for the virtual on the second Sunday in June, which is, lost it, June 9th. We'll send out reminders for that. Meanwhile, again, we'll have the Vet Chat for students this coming Sunday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And then the next Vet Chat Leaders is a hybrid. If you're not in the Denver area, then just let us know. You can still register and we can pop you in virtually. Otherwise, if you show up, we always come in the same place, same time on Wednesday, second Wednesday of the month in the morning, which would be Oops, I just got a little discombobulated. May 8th at 7 a.m. in Denver, Nixon's Coffee. So we'll see you there. Just let me know that you're coming, and that way we'll have that brew ready for you. If there's anything else, I just want to say that this is where we all have an opportunity to unmute. We ask all of you to unmute. And we do this as a celebration of all the successes that you have had in the past and in anticipation of all the great things coming up in the next week. Think of something that you learned from today. What was interesting? What can you go home? We're going to do a countdown and everyone's going to end up with a conjoined woohoo. So we need everybody to unmute. Think about that something special. And 3, 2, 1. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Thank you so much for joining.